Picture this, a handwritten book filled with bizarre plants, naked women bathing in green pools, and an alphabet unlike anything seen before. For over 600 years, the Voynich Manuscript has defied every scholar, codebreaker, and artificial intelligence system that tried to crack it. This isn't just one isolated mystery, it's part of a much larger puzzle. Scattered across time and continents, there are at least 30 other forgotten languages, their scripts still whispering secrets we can't understand. These aren't just curiosities, they're locked doors to lost civilizations, to knowledge that could rewrite history. From the spiraling symbols of Crete's Phaistos Disc to the knotted strings of the Inca's Quipu records, each undeciphered script holds a story waiting to be told. Some may be tax records or shopping lists, others could contain forgotten religions, lost sciences, or even warnings from the past. Today, we're embarking on a journey through time, dusting off 30 of history's most stubborn linguistic puzzles. By the end, you'll see why these silent scripts haunt researchers, and why cracking just one could change everything we know about humanity's hidden chapters. Let's begin. Now, let's turn our attention to the crown jewel of undeciphered scripts, the Voynich Manuscript. Found in an Italian monastery in the early 20th century, this enigmatic book has baffled experts for over a century with its strange, otherworldly illustrations and an alphabet that resembles nothing known to history. Its pages are a wild tapestry of unidentifiable plants with roots like animal limbs, intricate astrological charts featuring unfamiliar constellations, and women bathing in interconnected tubes of green liquid. It's as if someone transcribed the dreams of an entirely alien civilization. Carbon dating places its creation in the early 15th century, likely between 1400 and 1438, somewhere in Europe. But who wrote it and why? Theories range from the plausible to the fantastical. Some argue it's a coded medical text, possibly a herbal compendium with remedies too valuable to share openly. Others believe it's an alchemist's notebook, hiding the secrets of transformation behind layers of cipher. Then there's the tantalizing possibility it's an elaborate hoax, though the complexity of its symbols and the consistency of its script make this unlikely. What truly stuns researchers is how stubbornly the Voynich resists decoding. During World War II, Allied codebreakers, the same minds who cracked the Nazi enigma, turned their skills to the manuscript and came up empty. Even today, with the brute force power of artificial intelligence, we've hit walls. Algorithms detect patterns hinting at a real language, possibly a lost dialect or a deliberately constructed cipher, but the meaning remains just out of reach. One of the biggest hurdles, the lack of a Rosetta Stone, a bilingual key that could unlock its symbols. Without it, every attempt feels like groping in the dark. Yet, the very elusiveness of the Voynich keeps scholars hooked, because if we ever crack it, the revelations could be extraordinary. Imagine uncovering a forgotten branch of science or glimpsing the lost spiritual beliefs of a hidden intellectual tradition. For now, though, the manuscript sits in Yale University's Voynich Library, silently daring the next generation of codebreakers to try their luck. As we move forward, remember this: the Voynich isn't just a puzzle. It's a reminder of how much history remains hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right mind to finally listen to its whispers. And with that, let's journey to our next mystery, the cryptic symbols of Crete's Linear A. Stepping deeper into the shadows of forgotten scripts, we arrive at the shores of ancient Crete, where Linear awaits like a locked door to Europe's first advanced civilization. Unearthed in the ruins of Minoan palaces like Knossos and Phaistos, this elegant script, etched onto clay tablets and seals, flourished between 1800 and 1450 before Common Era. At first glance, its swirling symbols look hauntingly familiar because they are. Linear A is the mysterious ancestor of Linear B, the latter famously cracked in the 1950s by Michael Ventris, revealing an early form of Greek. But here's the twist. While Linear B's decryption was a watershed moment, its predecessor remained stubbornly silent, leaving the Minoan's true voice just out of earshot. The irony is palpable. We can read Linear B's inventories of sheep and chariots, yet Linear A's tablets, likely recording similar administrative details, keep their secrets. About 70 of its symbols overlap with Linear B, but the language they encode is utterly distinct. Theories abound. Could it be a lost Anatolian tongue, a precursor to Etruscan, or perhaps a unique Minoan language with no modern relatives? Without a bilingual inscription or a surviving descendant language, every hypothesis hits a wall. What makes this so tantalizing is what's at stake. The Minoans weren't just any ancient culture, they were pioneers. Their island empire, with its labyrinthine palaces, vibrant frescoes, and advanced plumbing, dominated the Bronze Age Mediterranean. Linear A's decipherment could rewrite our understanding of their trade networks, religious rituals, or even their sudden collapse, possibly linked to the Thera eruption around 1600 before Common Era. Imagine uncovering their contracts with Egypt or hymns to their serpent goddess. Modern technology offers glimmers of hope. Computational linguists have attacked the problem with algorithms designed to detect linguistic patterns, isolating repeating sign clusters that might mark word endings or grammatical structures. In 2014, a team proposed tentative links between Linear A and Luwian, an Anatolian language, but the evidence remains speculative, another hurdle. The corpus is frustratingly small, only around 1,400 inscriptions, many just fragments. Yet the quest continues, because hidden in these cryptic strokes could be the missing manual to a civilization that laid the foundations of Europe. Until then, Linear stands as a silent witness to how much we've lost, and how much we might still recover. And with that, let's set sail for another enigma, where wooden tablets on a remote island hold whispers of a fallen world. Now let's journey from the Mediterranean to the vast Pacific, where Easter Island's Rongorongo script whispers a haunting tale of isolation and mystery. Carved into wooden tablets by the Rapa Nui people, these intricate glyphs are one of the few independent writing systems to emerge in human history, yet they remain as enigmatic as the island's towering moai statues. Discovered in the 19th century, these artifacts may hold clues to the island's dramatic collapse, a cautionary story of ecological and cultural unraveling. What makes Rongorongo instantly fascinating is its bizarre writing style. Unlike most scripts which follow a single direction, these glyphs zigzag across the tablet in a pattern called reverse boustrophedon. Imagine a farmer plowing a field. The first line runs left to right, the next right to left, and so on. But here's the twist. The glyphs themselves flip upside down with each turn, like a snake coiling back on itself. This mirror image technique is found nowhere else in the world, suggesting a writing system developed in complete isolation. The content of these tablets is just as puzzling. Early European missionaries recorded that Rapa Nui elders could read the glyphs aloud in a rhythmic chant, linking them to Polynesian oral traditions of genealogy, astronomy, and creation myths. But here's the tragedy. By the time scholars took serious interest, most of these experts had perished due to disease and slave raids, taking the script's secrets with them. Today, only 26 authentic Rongorongo objects survive, many damaged by time or repurposed. One tablet was even carved into a surfboard by a missionary servant. Attempts to decipher Rongorongo have hit two major roadblocks. First, the glyphs resist easy categorization. Some resemble plants, animals, or tools, while others are abstract geometric shapes. Without a bilingual Rosetta Stone or living descendants who understand the script, modern linguists must rely on statistical analysis, searching for repeating patterns that might denote calendar cycles or divine names. The second challenge, the island's oral traditions, while rich, don't perfectly align with the glyphs. For example, the famous Tangata Monu or Birdman cult central to Rapa Nui's later history appears absent from the tablets, hinting the script may belong to an earlier, forgotten era. The stakes of cracking Rongorongo are uniquely personal. Unlike imperial records or trade ledgers, these tablets likely preserve the Rapa Nui's most sacred knowledge: how they navigated thousands of ocean miles to reach the island, how they marked time by the stars, or how they pleaded with gods during the island's ecological crisis. Did they warn of deforestation in these grooves, record the names of lost chiefs? Every chip in the wood feels like a voice straining to be heard across centuries. Recent breakthroughs offer faint hope. In 2018, researchers identified glyph sequences that may correlate with lunar months, suggesting an astronomical purpose. Meanwhile, parallels to other Polynesian petroglyphs like fishhooks or canoe sails hint at a shared visual language. But until a key emerges, Rongorongo remains a puzzle wrapped in an island's solitude. And as we leave these haunting glyphs behind, another artifact calls to us, this one stamped in clay, spinning its symbols in a perfect, unreadable circle. Leaving the riddles of Easter Island behind, we now turn to one of history's greatest linguistic enigmas, the Indus Valley Script. Etched into pottery, tools, and over 4,000 small stone seals, these symbols offer a silent glimpse into one of humanity's first urban civilizations, thriving along the banks of the Indus River 4,000 years ago. Yet despite more than a century of study, their meaning remains stubbornly out of reach, locked away without a bilingual key or even consensus on whether they represent a full language at all. What makes the Indus script so tantalizing is its sheer sophistication. With over 400 distinct signs, some pictographic, others abstract, it dwarfs the complexity of most proto-writing systems. These glyphs appear on exquisitely carved seals, often depicting animals like unicorns and bulls alongside clusters of symbols. But here's the catch: the average inscription is just 5 characters long, shorter than a tweet. Are these traders' marks, royal titles, or prayers? Without longer texts, linguists are left piecing together fragments of a puzzle with no edges. The debate over whether these symbols qualify as true writing hinges on 2 key questions. First, do they encode spoken language, or are they merely proto-writing, a system of administrative symbols like early Sumerian tokens? Some scholars point to the script's repetitive sign sequences, suggesting grammatical rules. Others counter that the symbols lack the flexibility of a full language, noting their rigid placement on seals, always above animal motifs. The second mystery is their abrupt disappearance. When the Indus cities declined around 1900 BC, their script vanished with them, leaving no clear descendant like Linear B's link to Greek. The seals themselves are miniature masterpieces. Crafted from steatite, they showcase precise geometric designs and vivid animal profiles, often drilled for suspension, hinting they were worn as amulets or stamped into clay. One famous seal shows a cross-legged figure surrounded by beasts, dubbed the Proto-Shiva for its resemblance to the Hindu god. But without decipherment, we can't know if this depicts a deity, a shaman, or something else entirely. Decoding efforts face unique hurdles. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs cracked by the Rosetta Stone, the Indus script has no bilingual inscription. Statistical analyses reveal patterns, like a fish sign often preceding certain glyphs, but without knowing the underlying language, these clues lead nowhere. Some propose links to ancient Dravidian tongues, while others argue for a lost language family. The script's brevity compounds the problem. As one linguist quipped, it's like trying to reconstruct war and peace from a handful of torn bookmarks. Recent advances offer cautious hope. Computer models have identified potential syntactic structures, and artifact discoveries in Oman suggest the script traveled with Indus traders. Yet until a longer inscription surfaces or a bilingual tablet emerges from the silt, this script remains a silent witness to a civilization that built the world's first planned cities, only to leave their stories untold. And as we move from these geometric seals, another ancient artifact awaits, one stamped not in stone, but in clay, its symbols spiraling like a labyrinth. As we unravel the dense tapestry of ancient scripts, our journey now takes us to the sun-baked plains of Iran, where the Proto-Elamite script offers a fascinating glimpse into one of humanity's earliest bureaucratic experiments. Emerging around 3100 BCE, this system of wedge-shaped marks predates even the famed cuneiform of Mesopotamia, yet it remains one of the most enigmatic writing systems ever discovered. What makes Proto-Elamite so intriguing isn't just its age, it's the story of its abrupt rise and fall, a linguistic flash in the pan that left behind thousands of clay tablets but no linguistic heirs. Unlike the elaborate seals of the Indus Valley, Proto-Elamite tablets are dominated by numbers. These aren't poetic inscriptions or royal decrees, they're dry economic records, filled with numerical notations accounting for grain, livestock, and labor. Out of the roughly 1,500 known signs, fewer than 100 represent actual words or concepts. The rest, a labyrinth of numerical symbols, some representing fractions, others large quantities, all meticulously organized in grid-like patterns. Imagine an ancient spreadsheet etched in clay. The script's simplicity is deceptive. While derived from the more complex proto-cuneiform of neighboring Sumer, Proto-Elamite streamlined its predecessor's signs into a sparser, more abstract system. Curiously, it dropped Sumer's pictorial elements, no animals, no tools, leaving behind stark geometric wedges. Scholars believe this shift reflects its singular purpose: administrative efficiency. These tablets weren't meant for storytelling or diplomacy. They were the backbone of a budding state's economy, tracking resources across the Elamite heartland. Yet within 2 centuries, the script vanished. Unlike cuneiform, which evolved and spread across empires, Proto-Elamite simply disappeared from the archaeological record around 2900 BC. The reason? A bureaucratic revolution. As Elam's society grew more complex, its scribes appear to have abandoned their homegrown system in favor of adapting Sumerian cuneiform, a script far better suited to recording nuanced transactions and legal texts. It's as if an entire culture switched from ledgers to legal contracts overnight. Decipherment efforts face unique hurdles. Without bilingual texts or even certainty about the underlying Elamite language, researchers rely heavily on the tablet's numerical patterns. Some breakthroughs have emerged, like identifying signs for sheep or barley based on recurring clusters, but the majority of the script's vocabulary remains opaque. Even the numerical system defies easy understanding. While some digits follow a base 10 logic, others use a baffling alternating base of 6 and 10, leaving mathematicians scratching their heads. The tablets themselves are marvels of early standardization. Unlike the ornate Indus seals, these are utilitarian rectangles, each bearing nearly identical formatting. Horizontal lines dividing entries, with numerical signs on the right and word signs on the left. Many even include header notations, ancient file labels hinting at a sophisticated archival system. One particularly revealing tablet from Tepe Yahia lists workers' rations with columns for names, daily grain allotments, and monthly totals. Its payroll etched in clay. What makes Proto-Elamite uniquely frustrating is its isolation. While most undeciphered scripts have living relatives or geographical neighbors to provide context, this system stands alone. Later Elamite cuneiform bears no direct relation, and its numerical quirks appear nowhere else in the ancient Near East. Some speculate it encodes a now-vanished language family, while others argue it was purely an administrative code, never meant to represent speech at all. Recent discoveries offer flickers of hope. In 2019, archaeologists in Iran uncovered a trove of previously unknown Proto-Elamite tablets, some with unusual sign combinations that may hold the key to cracking its logic. Meanwhile, computational analysis has identified subtle patterns in sign sequences, suggesting hidden grammatical rules. But until a Rosetta Stone emerges, perhaps a tablet with parallel Sumerian and Proto-Elamite entries, this script will remain a silent accountant of a lost Bronze Age bureaucracy. And as we leave these numerical puzzles behind, another ancient artifact beckons, one that swaps clay tablets for something far more enigmatic, a spiral of stamped symbols on a disc that has baffled scholars for over a century. Now we turn our attention from the orderly ledgers of Proto-Elamite to one of archaeology's most visually striking puzzles, the Phaistos Disc. Discovered in 1908 in the Minoan palace of Phaistos on Crete, this fired clay disc dates back to the 2nd millennium before Common Era and immediately stands out as something extraordinary. Unlike any other artifact from the ancient world, both sides bear a spiraling sequence of symbols, each painstakingly stamped into the clay with individual seals. This isn't hand-etched writing, it's what appears to be the world's earliest example of movable type printing, predating Gutenberg by over 3,000 years. The disc measures about 15 centimeters across, roughly the size of a modern saucer, and features 241 symbols comprising 45 distinct pictographs arranged in a tight spiral. These aren't abstract marks but vivid miniature images: a walking man, a helmeted head, a bee, a ship, even what looks like a castle. They're grouped into what scholars believe are separate words or phrases divided by carved lines. But here's what makes the Phaistos disc truly perplexing. Not a single matching symbol has ever been found elsewhere in Minoan archaeology. It's as if this language or code appeared once, then vanished without a trace. Theories about its purpose range from the sacred to the mundane. Some researchers propose it's a religious text, perhaps a hymn to the Minoan snake goddess, whose imagery appears in nearby artifacts. Others suggest it could be a calendar, with the spirals representing cyclical time. The more playful theories propose it might be an ancient board game's rulebook or even a form of early musical notation. Then there's the persistent idea that it's not Cretan at all, that it was brought from Anatolia or Egypt as a diplomatic gift or trade sample, explaining why its symbols don't match local scripts like Linear A. What truly hampers decipherment is the disc's complete isolation. Unlike the Rosetta Stone or even the Proto-Elamite tablets, there's no bilingual text, no clear cultural context, not even a second example to compare it to. Every attempted translation, and there have been dozens, rests on pure conjecture. In 1962, a researcher claimed it described an erotic ritual. 30 years later, another insisted it recorded a volcanic eruption. One recent computational study suggested the symbols might represent syllables from a lost Luwian language, but even this promising lead lacks definitive proof. The production method adds another layer of mystery. Those 45 stamp seals would have represented a significant investment of craftsmanship, the equivalent of an ancient printing press. Why create such specialized tools if you weren't planning to mass-produce texts? Yet not a single other stamped document has ever been found in Minoan Crete. Some speculate the disc might be a one-off experiment by an innovative scribe, or perhaps a failed attempt to standardize writing that was quickly abandoned. Recent technological analysis offers tantalizing clues. High-resolution imaging reveals that the stamps were pressed into the clay in a deliberate sequence, not randomly. The symbols show slight variations in depth and alignment, suggesting the artisan worked methodically from the outer edge inward. Some signs appear more worn than others, implying they were used repeatedly, evidence that these weren't created just for this disc. There may have been an entire set of these symbol stamps waiting to be rediscovered. The Phaistos disc's very uniqueness is both its fascination and its frustration. Without parallel texts, we're essentially trying to solve a crossword puzzle where every answer could theoretically fit. Some scholars have even controversially suggested it might be an elaborate hoax, though the consensus is firmly against this idea given its archaeological context. What's undeniable is that someone in Bronze Age Crete went to extraordinary lengths to encode a message in this medium, a message that has waited 3,600 years to be understood. And as this clay enigma continues to guard its secrets, our journey leads us to the jungles of Mesoamerica, where the Olmec civilization left behind glyphs that may hold the key to understanding the birth of writing in the Americas. Stepping away from the mysteries of Crete, we find ourselves in the humid lowlands of ancient Mesoamerica, where the Olmec civilization laid the foundations for one of the world's great writing systems. Often called the mother culture of the region, the Olmec flourished between around 900 and 400 before Common Era, leaving behind colossal stone heads and intricate jade carvings, but their writing system remains tantalizingly fragmentary. Unlike the Phaistos Disc's complete but isolated text, the Olmec script survives only in scattered glyphs, with fewer than 36 confirmed examples found so far. The most significant discovery came in 2002 at the site of Cascajal, where archaeologists unearthed a serpentine block carved with 62 distinct symbols. This Cascajal block, dating to approximately 900 before Common Era, shows clear sequencing of glyphs with deliberate spacing, suggesting it wasn't just decorative but conveyed actual language. What makes these symbols extraordinary is their potential connection to later Mesoamerican scripts. Several glyphs bear striking resemblance to Mayan writing that would emerge nearly 1,000 years later, including what appears to be an early version of the Mayan day sign, Ajor. This has led scholars to propose that the Olmec may have developed the first logosyllabic system in the Americas, where symbols represent both whole words and syllables, just as Mayan glyphs later would. The debate over the Olmec script's sophistication hinges on this crucial question: are we looking at true writing or proto-writing? Some researchers argue the symbols are primarily logographic, each representing a complete word or concept without phonetic elements. Others point to the Cascajal block's apparent syntactic structure as evidence of a more advanced system. The block's symbols repeat in varying combinations, much like words in a sentence, and some even show possible grammatical affixes, small marks that might modify meaning, similar to prefixes or suffixes in modern languages. Adding to the intrigue are 4 cylindrical seals found at the Olmec site of San Andres, dating to around 650 before Common Era. These seals depict what might be early examples of the Mesoamerican tradition of combining imagery with glyphs. One shows a bird with speech scrolls emerging from its beak alongside 2 possible logograms. This blending of art and writing would become a hallmark of later Mayan and Aztec manuscripts. The script's content remains speculative without longer texts, but the symbol's imagery offers clues. Many depict natural elements, maize, fish, insects suggesting records of crops or tribute. Others show abstract designs that could represent calendar dates or royal titles. One particularly compelling glyph on the Cascajal block resembles a throne with a dot and bar numeral above it, potentially an early use of the Mesoamerican Vigesimal base 20 counting system that the Maya perfected. Recent discoveries keep pushing back the timeline of Mesoamerican writing. In 2006, researchers identified possible Olmec glyphs on a ceramic fragment from San Lorenzo dated to 1100 before Common Era. If confirmed, this would make Olmec writing contemporary with the earliest Chinese oracle bones, and only centuries younger than Proto-Sinaitic, suggesting writing developed independently in Mesoamerica around the same time as in the Old World. As we piece together these fragmentary clues, the Olmec script presents a fascinating paradox. It clearly influenced later Mesoamerican systems, yet its own rules and vocabulary remain just out of reach. Each new discovery raises more questions. Did the Olmec invent writing in this region, or were they adapting even earlier systems now lost to time? Why did their script leave so few traces compared to their monumental art? The answers might rewrite our understanding of how ideas spread across ancient America. With this glimpse into Mesoamerica's linguistic dawn, our exploration now turns to an even older enigma: the strange symbols scratched onto pottery in Neolithic Europe, where the Vinca culture left markings that some believe represent Europe's first writing system. Leaving the humid jungles of Mesoamerica behind, we now travel thousands of years further back in time to the banks of the Danube River, where the Vinca culture flourished between the 6th and 5th millennium before Common Era. This ancient Balkan civilization left behind one of Europe's most tantalizing archaeological puzzles: the Vinca symbols, a collection of mysterious markings that may represent the continent's earliest attempt at writing. Dozens of these symbols have been found carved into pottery, figurines, and spindle walls across modern-day Serbia, Romania, and Bulgaria. What makes them extraordinary is their remarkable consistency. The same signs appear repeatedly across sites separated by hundreds of kilometers and several centuries. Some scholars argue this standardization suggests the symbols conveyed specific meanings rather than being purely decorative. The most compelling examples come from the Vinca below Biodio site near Belgrade, where excavations have uncovered thousands of artifacts bearing these marks. Among them are distinctive combinations of lines, crosses, swastikas, and what appear to be rudimentary pictograms, simple drawings of animals or tools. One frequently recurring symbol resembles a branching tree, while another looks like a comb with uneven teeth. These aren't random scratches, they show careful execution, often placed prominently on vessels meant to be visible when stored upright. Dating these symbols presents a staggering revelation. The oldest examples predate Sumerian cuneiform by over 2,000 years and Egyptian hieroglyphs by nearly 3,000. If proven to be writing, this would make the Vinca script not just Europe's oldest, but potentially the world's earliest known writing system. But the debate over whether these marks constitute true writing remains heated. Proponents of the writing hypothesis, like archaeologist Marija Gimbutas, point to the symbols' systematic nature and their evolution over time. Some combinations appear to follow rules: certain marks consistently pair together, while others never appear in combination. This patterning suggests grammatical structure beyond mere ownership marks or ritual symbols. On the other side, skeptics argue the symbols lack two crucial features of full writing systems. They don't appear to represent spoken language phonetically, and there's no evidence they were used to create complex messages. Unlike later scripts that clearly record names, transactions, or narratives, the Vinca symbols always appear isolated or in very short groupings, typically just 1 to 3 signs together. Recent statistical analyses have added fuel to the debate. Computer models comparing the symbols' distribution to known writing systems show patterns remarkably similar to early stages of other scripts. The symbols exhibit what linguists call Zipf's law distribution, a mathematical relationship between word frequency and rank found in all human languages. While not definitive proof, this does suggest the symbols weren't randomly assigned. The practical uses of these marks remain speculative. Some archaeologists propose they indicated contents, ownership, or ritual purposes. Imagine a Neolithic farmer marking which jug held grain versus which held fermented beverages. Others suggest they may have represented clan symbols or early numerical tallies. A particularly intriguing theory connects them to the old European culture's apparent worship of a great goddess, with certain symbols potentially representing divine names or ritual incantations. What's undeniable is the symbols' longevity. They persist virtually unchanged for nearly 2,000 years across the Vinca culture's territory, an astonishing continuity that implies shared understanding across generations. This stability contrasts sharply with the rapid evolution seen in undoubted writing systems, raising questions about whether the symbols served a different, perhaps more limited purpose. As excavations continue at Vinca sites, each discovery adds pieces to this Neolithic puzzle. In 2009, archaeologists uncovered a set of inscribed clay tablets at the Dispilio site in Greece bearing remarkably similar symbols, hinting at a wider network of symbolic communication. Even more provocative are the parallels some researchers see between Vinca markings and later scripts like linear and even runic alphabets, though most scholars consider these connections speculative at best. The Vinca symbols ultimately present us with a fundamental question about the nature of writing itself. If these marks conveyed meaningful information consistently across a vast cultural area for millennia, does it matter whether they fit our modern definitions of true writing? They may represent humanity's first steps toward symbolic communication, a bridge between simple ownership marks and the complex writing systems that would transform human history. With these Balkan mysteries fresh in our minds, our journey through forgotten scripts now takes us to an equally enigmatic artifact, the Dispilio tablet, another prehistoric writing candidate that pushes the boundaries of how we understand early communication. Turning our attention from the clay and pottery of the Vinca culture, we encounter an even more fragile relic of ancient communication, the Dispilio tablet. Discovered in 1992 during excavations at a lakeside Neolithic settlement in northern Greece, this remarkable wooden artifact bears carved symbols strikingly similar to those found on Vinca culture objects, yet it presents its own unique mysteries and preservation dilemmas. Dated to approximately 5200 before Common Era, the Dispilio tablet predates Sumerian cuneiform by over 1,000 years, making it one of the oldest known candidates for early writing. Unlike the fired clay artifacts that preserved Vinca symbols, this tablet's survival is nothing short of miraculous. Submerged in the waters of Lake Castoria for millennia, the waterlogged wood defied the usual fate of organic materials from this era. The anaerobic conditions of the lakebed prevented the oxygen-dependent bacteria that typically destroy ancient wood, allowing this fragile testament to Neolithic symbolic communication to endure. The tablet, roughly the size of a modern hardcover book, contains a series of carefully incised symbols arranged in linear groupings. Some markings clearly resemble those found at Vinca sites: branching lines, crossed strokes, and comb-like patterns. However, Dispilio's symbols show distinct variations, suggesting either regional differences or an independent development of symbolic communication. What makes this artifact particularly compelling is its context. It was found among the remains of a stilt house settlement, a sophisticated lakeside community that practiced agriculture, animal husbandry, and possibly early forms of trade. Archaeologists have proposed several theories about the tablet's purpose. The most plausible suggests it served as an inventory system, an early accounting device tracking food stores, traded goods, or ritual offerings. The repetitive nature of certain symbol combinations supports this interpretation. Imagine a Neolithic farmer making tally marks to record sacks of grain or bundles of fish caught in the lake. Other researchers speculate the symbols may have represented lunar calendars or seasonal markers, crucial for an agricultural community dependent on planting and harvest cycles. The preservation challenges surrounding the Dispilio tablet are as fascinating as its symbols. When first excavated, exposure to air immediately threatened the waterlogged wood. Conservationists faced a race against time to stabilize the artifact, ultimately using advanced polyethylene glycol treatments to gradually replace the water in the wood's cellular structure without causing collapse or distortion. Even with these measures, some symbols became less distinct during the preservation process, a heartbreaking loss of potential information about early human communication. Comparative studies with other ancient writing systems yield intriguing possibilities. The linear arrangement of symbols bears some resemblance to later Proto-Elamite accounting tablets from Mesopotamia, while certain recurring motifs echo Vinca culture markings found hundreds of kilometers away. This raises provocative questions about possible networks of symbolic communication spanning Neolithic Europe, or alternatively, about the independent emergence of similar solutions to the universal human need for record-keeping. Unlike the thousands of Vinca artifacts providing statistical data for analysis, the Dispilio tablet stands frustratingly alone at its site. No other inscribed wooden objects have been found there, though excavations continue. This isolation makes it difficult to determine whether the tablet represents a widespread practice or an experimental outlier. Recent underwater archaeology in the lake has revealed additional wooden structures from the settlement, offering hope that more inscribed artifacts may yet surface. The Dispilio tablet forces us to reconsider the boundaries between proto-writing and true writing. While its symbols don't constitute a full writing system capable of recording spoken language, they demonstrate sophisticated symbolic thinking and information storage, the cognitive foundations upon which writing would later develop. The tablet's very existence suggests that Neolithic societies across Europe were experimenting with symbolic communication millennia before the rise of city-states in Mesopotamia and Egypt. As we piece together these fragments of humanity's first attempts at recorded communication, our journey through forgotten scripts takes us next to an entirely different solution to the problem of information storage: the intricate knotted strings of the Inca Quipu, a system that may have encoded narratives as well as numbers. Stepping away from the carved symbols of ancient Europe, we now encounter a radically different approach to record keeping, one that twisted fibers into meaning rather than etching clay or wood. The Inca Quipu, a complex system of knotted cords, represents one of humanity's most ingenious solutions to the challenge of storing information without traditional writing. Unlike the Dispilio tablet's static symbols, these vibrant threads wove together mathematics, memory, and perhaps even language itself across the vast Andes. At first glance, a quipu resembles an intricate macrame artwork, dozens of pendant cords hanging from a primary rope, each adorned with clusters of knots. But to the Inca administrators who created them between the 15th and 16th centuries, these were meticulous records capable of tracking everything from census data to grain harvests across their empire. The system's brilliance lies in its multidimensional coding. Knot placement indicated numerical values, with different knot types representing units, tens, hundreds, while cord colors, fiber twists, and even the direction of knots might have conveyed additional layers of meaning. Imagine a spreadsheet translated into textiles, where a crimson cord with 7-figure 8 knots could denote 7 bushels of quinoa from a specific valley. Spanish colonial accounts provide tantalizing glimpses of how these devices functioned in practice. Chroniclers like Garcilaso de la Vega documented specialized officials called Quipucamayuk, or Quipu readers, who could interpret these knotted archives with fluency. Some reports suggest they even used quipus to recount historical narratives and legal disputes, hinting at a potential linguistic dimension beyond mere accounting. One Jesuit priest in 1570 described witnessing a local elder unspool a quipu to recite an entire village's history over 3 days, raising profound questions about whether these strings functioned as a true 3-dimensional writing system. Modern researchers approach quipus with both fascination and frustration. Of the roughly 1,000 surviving examples, many preserved in dry Andean tombs, most align clearly with numerical data. Harvard's Gary Urton has identified a potential binary coding system within the knots, where factors like knot direction clockwise versus counterclockwise might represent additional information. Meanwhile, anthropologist Sabine Heil's work with contemporary Peruvian communities suggests certain color patterns could encode syllables from the Quechua language. In 2017, she studied quipus from the remote village of San Juan de Colata, where elders preserved oral traditions linking specific chord colors to phonetic sounds, like a pink thread representing the word warrior. The debate over quipus capabilities mirrors larger questions about how we define writing. If a system can record numbers but not full sentences, does it qualify? The Inca themselves may have had a flexible view. Some quipus include top chords thought to serve as titles or summaries, while others feature unusual knot sequences that resist numerical interpretation. Recent discoveries have added fuel to the mystery, like the 15-chord Quipu found with a colonial-era manuscript, its knots seemingly corresponding to Spanish loanwords in Quechua. Could this be evidence of cultural adaptation where knotted strings absorbed foreign terms? Preservation challenges compound the decipherment effort. Many quipus were destroyed during the Spanish conquest, and those that survived often lost their original context. Unlike tablets with fixed inscriptions, quipus required living interpreters, meaning the death of the Quipucamayok cast effectively severed access to their full meaning. Modern technology offers new hope. Multispectral imaging can reveal faded dyes, while databases catalog knot patterns across collections to identify recurring formulae. What makes the Quipu extraordinary is its simultaneous simplicity and sophistication. With nothing but dyed alpaca wool and cunning knots, the Inca built an administrative system that rivaled old-world bureaucracies and may have edged into true literacy. As we continue unraveling these stringed enigmas, our exploration of forgotten scripts leads us next to the Isthmian glyphs of Central America, where jaguar motifs and abstract symbols hint at another lost linguistic world. Leaving behind the knotted threads of the Andes, we now turn our attention to the dense jungles of Central America, where another cryptic script has long puzzled scholars. The Isthmian script, carved onto stone monuments and pottery between the years 500 and 600, offers a tantalizing glimpse into a bridge between Mesoamerica's earliest writing systems and the more familiar glyphs of the Aztec Empire. What makes this script so intriguing is its fusion of the primal and the sophisticated jaguars and serpents slither alongside geometric shapes, suggesting a language that was both deeply symbolic and meticulously structured. Unlike the Quipu's tactile knots, Isthmian glyphs were etched into enduring stone, with the most famous examples discovered at sites like La Mojara in Veracruz, Mexico. Here, a towering sandstone slab known as the La Mojara Stela stands as the script's Rosetta Stone, except no one has fully cracked its code. The stela boasts over 500 carved symbols, including a prominent portrait of a ruler named Harvest Mountain Lord, flanked by columns of glyphs that may recount his triumphs or divine lineage. Some symbols resemble later Aztec day signs, like the glyph for water or movement, while others remain wholly unique, a swirling spiral that could mean cycle or a stylized hand clutching an unknown object. Decipherment efforts have been as contentious as they are creative. In the 1990s, two linguists, John Justison and Terence Kaufman, proposed a partial breakthrough, arguing that Isthmian was a precursor to the Zoque language and identifying glyphs for numbers, calendar dates, and even verbs like to conquer. Their work suggested the script was logosyllabic, a mix of symbols representing whole words and syllable sounds, much like Maya writing, but their interpretation sparked debate, with critics pointing to inconsistencies in how the same glyphs were read across different inscriptions. Then, in 2010, another team led by David Mora-Marin used computational analysis to propose ties to the mixed Zoquian languages, further muddying the waters. The lack of a bilingual inscription, a key that pairs Isthmian with a known language, has left scholars in a stalemate. What makes Isthmian uniquely frustrating is its tantalizing familiarity. Some glyphs echo Olmec motifs, suggesting cultural continuity, while others foreshadow Aztec pictograms. A recurring jaguar glyph, for instance, might symbolize royalty in one context and a ritual calendar day in another. Meanwhile, abstract symbols, zigzags, dotted circles defy easy categorization. Are they phonetic clues, religious icons, or even early punctuation? The script's compactness adds to the challenge. Most inscriptions are short, with fewer than 30 glyphs offering limited context. Recent discoveries have only deepened the intrigue. In 2019, archaeologists unearthed a ceramic flask in Oaxaca bearing Isthmian glyphs alongside imagery of a maize god, a rare fusion of text and myth. The vessel's symbols included a previously unseen glyph resembling a sprouting plant, fueling theories that the script encoded agricultural rituals or offerings. Meanwhile, LiDAR surveys have revealed new stelae hidden under jungle canopy, their inscriptions potentially holding the key to broader patterns. The Isthmian script's legacy lies in its ambiguity. Was it a dead end, or did its symbols evolve into the Aztecs' Nahuatl writings? Could it even hold clues to the great Olmec script that preceded it? For now, each glyph remains a locked door, waiting for the right linguist or algorithm to turn the key. As we continue our journey through forgotten languages, we next venture to the windswept plains of Romania, where the enigmatic Tartaria tablets whisper of a script far older than anyone imagined. Now, shifting our gaze from the jungles of Mesoamerica to the rolling hills of southeastern Europe, we encounter one of the most hotly debated artifacts in the history of writing. The Tartaria tablets, three small clay objects unearthed in Romania in 1961, date back an astonishing 7,300 years older than the pyramids of Egypt and even the earliest Sumerian cuneiform. These palm-sized tablets etched with strange symbols have sparked a firestorm among archaeologists. Are we looking at the world's earliest writing system, or merely ritual tokens from a Neolithic cult? Discovered in a burial site near the village of Tartaria, the tablets were found alongside charred human bones and a clay figurine, suggesting a ceremonial context. Two are rectangular, while the third is disc-shaped, all incised with combinations of lines, circles, and what appear to be rudimentary pictographs: a horned animal, a branching plant, and a series of staggered lines resembling later Inca symbols from the Balkans. The markings aren't random scratches, they're carefully grouped with some sequences repeating across tablets, hinting at a deliberate system. The controversy hinges on a fundamental question. Do these symbols represent language, or are they proto-writing, a step between simple ownership marks and true script? Supporters of the writing theory, like archaeologist Marija Gimbutas, point to parallels with the Inca culture's symbols which flourished across the Balkans around the same time. Both share angular motifs, including zigzags and grid-like patterns, and some Tartaria signs eerily resemble later Sumerian numerals. Could these tablets be a lost branch of an even older pan-European symbolic tradition? Skeptics counter that the tablet's brevity, just 26 symbols total, makes linguistic interpretation impossible. Instead, they propose the marks were ritual tallies, perhaps counting offerings or lunar cycles. The disc tablet's spiral motif, for instance, mirrors Neolithic sun wheel carvings found across Europe, tied to fertility cults, and the burial context suggests a funerary purpose. Were they amulets meant to guide the dead or contracts with the spirit world? The debate took a dramatic turn in 2003 when radiocarbon dating of the bones at the Tartaria site confirmed their age, placing them squarely in the Inca cultural sphere. This fueled speculation that the tablets weren't an isolated fluke but part of a broader symbolic network. Yet, unlike the Inca symbols which appear on household items, Tartaria's glyphs are confined to these ceremonial objects. That distinction keeps scholars divided. Recent research adds another layer. Microscopic analysis reveals the symbols were incised while the clay was still wet, suggesting they weren't added over time as tallies but created in a single intentional act. Even more intriguing, one tablet bears what looks like a signature, a unique cluster of marks near the edge, possibly identifying its maker or owner. If true, this would push the origins of personal identification systems back thousands of years earlier than previously thought. The Tartaria tablets remain an enigma wrapped in clay. They're either a revolutionary missing link in the story of writing or a poignant reminder of how easily we project meaning onto ancient artifacts. What's undeniable is their power to captivate. Unlike the Isthmian script with its ties to known Mesoamerican languages, Tartaria's symbols stand alone, a silent challenge from the dawn of civilization. As we ponder these tiny tablets, our journey takes us next to the banks of China's Yellow River, where symbols carved into tortoise shells may hold the title of the world's oldest proto-writing. Leaving behind the mysteries of the Tartaria tablets, we now journey to the banks of China's Yellow River, where an even older puzzle awaits. Here, buried in the Neolithic soil of Jiahu, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary: tortoise shells and animal bones etched with symbols that date back a staggering 9,000 years. That's 3,000 years older than the earliest Sumerian cuneiform and twice as ancient as the Egyptian pyramids. These carvings, known as the Jiahu symbols, might just be the world's oldest attempt at writing. Discovered in the 1980s at a dig site in Henan province, the Jiahu artifacts consist of 16 distinct marks carved into turtle plastrons and bone fragments. Unlike random scratches, these symbols appear in deliberate groupings, some repeated across multiple shells, hinting at a shared system of meaning. Among the most intriguing is a mark resembling the later Chinese character for "I", alongside others that echo ancient numerals or rudimentary pictographs. The parallels to the Shang dynasty's oracle bones, used for divination 3,000 years later, are uncanny. Could the Jiahu symbols be the first sparks of a writing system that eventually flourished into Chinese script? The site itself adds layers to the mystery. Jiahu was a thriving Neolithic village, home to early rice farmers who crafted flutes from bird bones and fermented the world's oldest known alcoholic beverage. The tortoise shells were found in graves, often placed near the deceased, suggesting a ritual or spiritual purpose. This context fuels one compelling theory: the symbols might represent early divinatory practices, a precursor to the oracle bones that later dynasties used to communicate with the spirit world. Imagine a shaman carving marks onto a shell, seeking answers from the unseen, a tradition that persisted for millennia. Yet skepticism lingers, and for good reason. 16 symbols are a vanishingly small sample size, making it impossible to confirm whether they represent language, ownership marks, or even decorative doodles. Critics argue that without longer inscriptions or contextual clues, labeling them proto-writing is premature. Compare this to the Tartaria tablets debate, where even 26 symbols left scholars divided. The Jiahu marks could simply be clan emblems or ritual identifiers, much like the Inca symbols of Europe. Recent advances in archaeology, however, tilt the scales toward intentional communication. Microscopic analysis reveals the carvings were made with sharp tools, their strokes deliberate and consistent. Even more telling, some shells bear burn marks near the symbols, echoing the crack-reading practice of Shang diviners who heated bones to interpret the fractures as divine messages. This eerie resemblance suggests a cultural thread stretching across 6,000 years of Chinese history. The Jiahu symbols stand at the blurry boundary between art and language. They might not form sentences, but their repetition and context imply something more than randomness. If they are proto-writing, they'd push back the origins of symbolic communication to a time when humanity was still transitioning from hunter-gatherer life to settled farming. That's a revolution etched in tortoise shell. As we marvel at these ancient carvings, our exploration takes us next to the sun-baked cliffs of the Sinai Peninsula, where miners left behind a script that bridges hieroglyphs and the alphabet. From the enigmatic carvings of ancient China, we now shift our gaze westward to the bustling ports of the Mediterranean, where another linguistic puzzle lies hidden in the ruins of Byblos. This Lebanese city, one of the oldest continuously inhabited in the world, was a thriving hub of trade and culture in the second millennium before the Common Era. Here, among the cedar logs and papyrus shipments, archaeologists unearthed a script that could hold the key to understanding the evolution of writing itself, the Byblos syllabary. Discovered in the early 20th century, the Byblos syllabary consists of over 100 short inscriptions carved into bronze tablets, spatulas, and even a royal sarcophagus. Unlike the Jiahu symbols, these marks aren't isolated doodles, they're part of a coherent system, with clear groupings of geometric signs that repeat across artifacts. The script symbols are strikingly angular, a mix of zigzags, crosses, and ladder-like shapes that stand apart from the flowing curves of Egyptian hieroglyphs, yet share their abstract simplicity. Some scholars argue these shapes aren't just random. They might represent syllables, making this a true syllabic writing system, much like linear or later Cypriot scripts. What makes the Biblos syllabary truly fascinating is its potential role as a missing link in the history of alphabets. Its symbols bear an uncanny resemblance to both Egyptian hieroglyphs and early Phoenician letters. Take, for example, a sign resembling a crooked line almost identical to the Phoenician letter Aleph, which itself evolved from an Egyptian hieroglyph of an ox's head. Another Biblos symbol, a zigzag, mirrors the Phoenician mem, derived from the hieroglyph for water. These parallels suggest that the scribes of Biblos might have adapted Egyptian symbols into a simplified syllabic format, paving the way for the Phoenician alphabet, the ancestor of nearly every modern writing system, from Greek to Latin to Arabic. Context adds weight to this theory. Biblos was a crossroads of civilizations with deep ties to Egypt. Pharaohs sent gifts to its temples, and Egyptian motifs litter its ruins. It's not hard to imagine local scribes surrounded by hieroglyphic inscriptions, experimenting with a shorthand system for their own language. Yet the syllabary's language remains a mystery. Unlike the bilingual Rosetta Stone, no translation key exists. Some propose it records an early form of Canaanite, the language group that includes Phoenician and Hebrew, while others speculate it could be a unique dialect lost to time. The inscriptions themselves offer tantalizing clues. Many appear on votive offerings or royal objects, suggesting ceremonial or administrative use. One bronze spatula, for instance, bears a 7-sign inscription alongside a depiction of a deity, possibly a dedicatory prayer. Another, found in the tomb of King Ahram, is etched into a bowl, hinting at funerary rites, but without longer texts or grammatical patterns, decipherment stalls. Imagine trying to reconstruct English from a handful of words like gift, king, and pray. Possible but fraught with guesswork. Recent technological advances, though, are breathing new life into the puzzle. High-resolution 3D scanning has revealed subtle tool marks, confirming the script was carefully incised rather than hastily scratched. Computational analysis has also identified recurring sign sequences, bolstering the syllabic theory. And in 2019, a team proposed tentative sound values for 10 symbols based on their Phoenician parallels, though this remains hotly debated. The Biblos syllabary stands at a pivotal moment in history, a bridge between pictorial hieroglyphs and abstract alphabets. Its existence suggests that the leap from complex scripts to efficient, accessible writing wasn't a sudden Phoenician innovation but a gradual process, with Biblos as a crucible of experimentation. If deciphered, it could rewrite the story of how humanity first learned to transcribe speech, illuminating a chapter of cultural exchange between Egypt and the Levant. As we piece together these fragments of the past, our journey now takes us to the windswept plateaus of Cyprus, where another undeciphered script, Minoan, hides secrets of the Bronze Age. Stepping away from the sun-baked ruins of the Mediterranean, let's turn our attention to a very different kind of mystery, one shrouded in the dim candlelight of European monasteries and the whispers of forgers. Hidden in the archives of Hungary's Academy of Sciences lies the Rongorongo Codex, a peculiar manuscript that has baffled scholars for centuries. Unlike the ancient scripts we've explored so far, this one is relatively young, with origins hotly debated between the 16th and 19th centuries. But what makes it truly extraordinary is its sheer volume, 200 densely packed pages, each filled with an unknown script alongside eerie, Christian-themed illustrations of crucifixions, saints, and celestial battles. The codex first surfaced in the early 19th century, donated to the Hungarian Academy by Count Gustav Batthyány, who claimed it came from his family's library in Rongorongo, now part of modern-day Austria. From the moment it entered the public eye, it sparked fierce controversy. The script is unlike anything seen before, a chaotic mix of runic, Hebrew, and invented symbols arranged in tight left-to-right lines. Some characters resemble upside-down Latin letters, while others look like rotated Greek or even rudimentary mathematical notations. Yet despite decades of analysis, no one has convincingly cracked its code. Hoax theories abound. Skeptics point to the timing of its discovery, the early 1800s, when Europe was gripped by a craze for ancient manuscripts, many of which turned out to be clever forgeries. The Voynich Manuscript, another infamous puzzle, faced similar doubts, but the Rongorongo Codex has defenders. Recent radiocarbon testing on its vellum pages dates them to the 1500s to 1600s, ruling out a 19th century fabrication. Even so, the ink and binding materials remain untested, leaving room for doubt. What's undeniable are the illustrations. They're unmistakably Christian, but with bizarre twists. One scene depicts a figure crucified not on a traditional cross, but on a T-shaped Tau cross, a detail more common in early Coptic or Gnostic traditions. Another shows a battle between armored knights and turbaned warriors, suggesting a clash between Christian and Ottoman forces, a recurring theme in Hungarian history. Oddly, some symbols reappear in these drawings, almost like captions, hinting that the script might label or describe the images. Attempts to decipher it have led to wild claims. In the 1870s, a Hungarian scholar declared it a record of medieval Shakely people, linking it to Transylvanian runes. A century later, a Croatian researcher argued it was written in a Slavic cipher. More recently, linguist Levent Zoltán Korály proposed it's a devotional text in a coded form of Old Hungarian, but his theory lacks consensus, the biggest hurdle. There's no Rosetta Stone for the Rongorongo Codex, no bilingual key or even a clear linguistic family to anchor it. What's tantalizing is how the script behaves. Statistical analysis shows it has features of a real language. Symbol frequencies match natural word lengths, and certain characters cluster like consonants or vowels. But without knowing the underlying tongue, progress stalls. Some suggest it's an elaborate cipher, perhaps a religious code meant to hide heresies from the Inquisition. Others wonder if it's glossolalia, speaking in tongues, transcribed by a mystic. The illustrations offer another clue. Their style blends Renaissance detail with medieval naivety, suggesting a work created on the fringes of mainstream art. The mix of Latin, Byzantine, and possibly even Islamic motifs hints at a multicultural origin, perhaps from the borderlands between Christian Europe and the Ottoman Empire. One provocative theory ties it to the Paulicians, a dualist sect persecuted in both empires, who might have used such a code to preserve their teachings. As the debate rages on, the Rongorongo Codex remains one of Europe's most stubborn enigmas, a manuscript that dances on the line between genius and deception. Whether it's an elaborate hoax, a lost devotional text, or something even stranger, it challenges our assumptions about how writing evolves and what secrets might still lurk in the archives. And with that, our journey takes us to the windswept cliffs of Easter Island, where petroglyphs whisper stories of a vanished civilization. Now, from the cryptic confines of European archives, we journey to the rugged landscapes of Bulgaria, where ancient stones whisper secrets under open skies. Carved into a weathered cliff near the village of Satovo lies an inscription that has puzzled archaeologists for decades, a series of symbols so enigmatic they might just hold the key to understanding Europe's mystical past. Dating back to around 2000 before Common Era, these carvings are believed to be the work of the Thracians, a civilization famed for their warrior culture and deep spiritual traditions. But what sets the Satovo inscription apart isn't just its age. It's the tantalizing possibility that these marks were more than simple graffiti. They might have been a celestial map, a religious text, or even a portal to the divine. The symbols themselves are a mix of geometric shapes, zigzagging lines, and what appear to be rudimentary human figures. some researchers argue that their arrangement isn't random. When observed at certain times of the year, particularly during solstices, the carvings align with the movement of the sun, casting shadows that highlight specific symbols. This has led to theories that the inscription served as an ancient solar calendar, marking the changing seasons for agricultural or ritual purposes. Imagine standing there as the winter solstice sun dips low, illuminating a sequence of symbols that signaled the return of longer days, a moment of both practical necessity and sacred celebration. But the intrigue doesn't stop there. The Thracians were known for their worship of Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, and rebirth. Some scholars see a connection between the Setovo carvings and the cryptic texts associated with Dionysian cults. These cults often used symbolic language to encode their rituals, shielding their mysteries from the uninitiated. Could the inscription be a fragment of such a text? A few bold theories suggest that the zigzagging lines represent vines, linking the carvings to Dionysian rites involving intoxication and spiritual transcendence. Others propose that the human-like figures depict initiates in mid-ritual, their arms raised in worship or dance. The challenge, of course, is the lack of context. Unlike the Rongorongo Codex, which exists as a complete, if indecipherable, manuscript, the Setovo inscription is isolated. No other examples of this script have been found nearby, leaving linguists without comparative material. Attempts to link it to known Thracian symbols or later Greek alphabets have yielded no definitive matches. Some speculate it might be proto-writing, a bridge between pictorial symbols and a true writing system. But without a bilingual inscription or a Rosetta Stone equivalent, the meaning remains locked in stone. One compelling angle ties the inscription to the broader spiritual landscape of the region. Nearby archaeological sites have revealed Thracian temples adorned with solar motifs, reinforcing the idea that the carvings could be part of a larger cosmological tradition. The alignment with solstices wouldn't just be practical, it would be sacred, a way to commune with the gods. And if the Dionysian link holds, the inscription might even encode instructions for rituals meant to induce altered states of consciousness rites that would later influence Greek and Roman mystery cults. Yet skepticism persists, without direct evidence linking the carvings to Dionysus or any specific cult. Some argue they could simply be boundary markers or tribal insignia. The Thracians left no deciphered written records of their own. So much of what we know comes from Greek accounts, which are often biased or incomplete. This leaves the Setovo inscription hovering between history and myth, a puzzle that refuses to surrender its secrets. What's undeniable is the aura of mystery that clings to these carvings. They remind us that long before the rise of empires, people were leaving messages in stone, messages we're still struggling to read. Whether it's a farmer's almanac, a hymn to a god, or something beyond our modern frameworks, the Setovo inscription challenges us to listen more closely to the whispers of the past. And with that, our exploration turns to the jungles of Mesoamerica, where another ancient script awaits, one etched not on rock but on serpentine. Crossing continents and centuries, we now find ourselves in the heart of ancient Mesoamerica, where a single slab of serpentine stone might rewrite the history of writing in the Americas. Unearthed in the late 1990s near the village of Cascajal in Mexico, this unassuming green block bears 62 intricate glyphs, symbols so distinctive, they've ignited fiery debates among scholars. Dated to around 900 before Common Era, the Cascajal block isn't just old. It's potentially the oldest evidence of writing in the entire region, predating even the Maya script by centuries. But here's the twist: its authenticity isn't universally accepted, and its isolation makes it a tantalizing yet controversial puzzle. The block itself is small, roughly the size of a laptop, with glyphs carved in horizontal rows. These symbols aren't random scratches, they show deliberate repetition and variation, hallmarks of a true writing system. Some resemble plants or animals, while others are abstract, like crossed bands or dots. What's fascinating is how they cluster. Certain glyphs appear repeatedly in specific sequences, suggesting they might represent words or grammatical structures. For context, imagine finding a single page of an unknown book. You might not understand the story, but the patterns hint at a language. That's the enigma of the Cascajal block. But why the skepticism? For starters, it was discovered not in a formal archaeological dig, but during road construction, raising questions about its original context. Without layers of soil or accompanying artifacts to confirm its age, some experts argue it could be a modern forgery. Others counter that the glyph style aligns perfectly with Olmec art, a civilization known for its colossal heads and jade craftsmanship. The Olmecs, often called Mesoamerica's mother culture, thrived from around 1200 to 400 before Common Era. If the block is genuine, it implies they developed writing far earlier than previously thought, reshaping our understanding of intellectual evolution in the Americas. One compelling detail is the presence of a glyph that looks like an ear of corn. Corn was sacred to the Olmecs, the literal foundation of their society, so its inclusion might symbolize prosperity or a divine offering. Another glyph resembles a throne, possibly indicating royal authority. These symbols could point to the block's purpose, a dedicatory inscription for a temple, a ruler's proclamation, or even an early attempt at record-keeping. But without more samples, no other Olmec texts have been found. Decipherment is like trying to solve a crossword puzzle with no clues. The block's critics highlight its uniqueness. In archaeology, a single artifact is often an outlier until corroborated by additional finds. Compare this to the Indus Valley Script, where thousands of inscriptions exist, or Linear B, which was deciphered using repetitive palace records. The Cascajal block stands alone, leaving linguists without comparative material. Some propose its proto-writing, a transitional step between simple symbols and full-blown language. Others wonder if it's an elaborate hoax, though replicating Olmec stylistic nuances convincingly would require extraordinary skill. Despite the doubts, the block's supporters point to its material. Serpentine was prized by the Olmecs for ritual objects, making it an unlikely choice for forgers unfamiliar with ancient preferences. Additionally, the glyphs show where patterns consistent with centuries of erosion, not modern tools. If genuine, the block could illuminate how writing evolved in Mesoamerica, perhaps from ceremonial carvings to administrative tools, mirroring the path of cuneiform in Mesopotamia. The broader implications are staggering. If the Olmecs had writing, they might have recorded histories, rituals, or trade agreements now lost to time. Their influence on later cultures like the Maya and Aztecs would take on new dimensions, suggesting a deeper continuity of knowledge. Yet until another example surfaces, the Cascajal block remains a solitary whisper from the past, daring us to listen. As we leave this green enigma behind, our journey takes us next to the windswept shores of Southeast Asia, where a shattered stone fragment holds echoes of a maritime empire's forgotten language. Now let's travel from the mysteries of Mesoamerica to the bustling port city of Singapore, where a single shattered stone holds fragments of a language lost to time. Known as the Singapore Stone, this 10-century-old sandstone slab was once part of a much larger monument, standing proudly at the mouth of the Singapore River. Covered in cryptic inscriptions, it might have been a royal decree, a religious edict, or even a navigational marker for ancient sailors. But here's the tragedy. The stone was blown apart by the British in 1843 to make way for a fort expansion, leaving behind only a handful of faint rubbings as clues to its secrets. The surviving fragment, now housed in Singapore's National Museum, measures roughly 1 meter in height and width. Its surface is etched with 50 to 60 characters, arranged in 3 imperfect lines. The script itself is elegant yet alien, with curved strokes resembling the old Javanese Kawi alphabet or early forms of Sanskrit. two writing systems used across maritime Southeast Asia during that era. But without the full text or a bilingual reference, linguists are left piecing together a puzzle with most of its parts missing. Imagine trying to reconstruct an epic poem from a handful of scattered words. That's the challenge the Singapore stone presents. Dating the stone adds another layer of intrigue. Based on stylistic comparisons, experts place its origins between the 9th and 12th centuries, a time when Singapore, then known as Temasek, was a thriving hub in the Srivijaya Empire. This maritime powerhouse controlled trade routes from China to India, and its inscriptions often blended Sanskrit, used for sacred texts, with local dialects like Old Malay. The stone's location, near what was likely an ancient harbor, suggests it could have been a boundary marker or a tribute to a sea deity. One tantalizing theory proposes it recorded a curse or warning to passing ships, a common practice in the region to deter piracy. The rubbings themselves, made by colonial officers before the stone's destruction, reveal faint but deliberate carvings. Some characters resemble the letter Ta in Kawi, while others mirror Sanskrit numerals. A few glyphs appear to depict anchors or waves, hinting at a maritime connection. But the critical obstacle is the lack of repetition. No phrases or symbols recur in the surviving fragments, making it impossible to identify grammatical patterns or even confirm if it's a standalone message or part of a larger narrative. Compare this to the Rosetta Stone, where the same text appears in 3 scripts. Here, we have no such Rosetta Stone. British engineers, oblivious to its historical value, dynamited the original monument to clear land for Fort Fullerton. Only one fragment was saved, thanks to a preservation-minded officer who recognized its significance. The destruction mirrors the fate of other colonial-era artifacts, like the Buddhas of Bamiyan, where cultural heritage was sacrificed for modernization. Today, digital reconstructions attempt to recreate the stone's original appearance, but gaps in the rubbings leave much to speculation. What makes the Singapore stone especially haunting is its potential to rewrite regional history. If deciphered, it could confirm Singapore's importance as a pre-colonial trading center, long before Sir Stamford Raffles established modern Singapore in 1819. Some scholars believe it might reference a forgotten king or a treaty between Srivijaya and a neighboring kingdom. Others posit it could be an early example of Malay writing, predating the Jawi script derived from Arabic. The irony is thick. A relic that might have celebrated connectivity was itself disconnected from its context. Yet, even in its fragmented state, the stone symbolizes resilience, a whisper from a cosmopolitan past where languages, goods, and ideas flowed as freely as the river beside which it once stood. As we move forward, our next stop takes us to the windswept plateaus of Transylvania, where tiny clay tablets stir colossal debates about the dawn of writing itself. Leaving behind the enigmatic fragments of the Singapore stone, we journey far back in time over 7,000 years, to the rolling hills of Transylvania, where 3 small clay tablets were unearthed, sparking one of archaeology's most enduring debates. Discovered in 1961 near the village of Tartaria, these palm-sized artifacts, dating to around 5,300 before Common Era, bear strange incised symbols eerily reminiscent of the Inca script we explored earlier. But are they proto-writing, ritual tokens, or something even more extraordinary? The tablets themselves are deceptively simple. 2 are rectangular, while the third is disc-shaped, all carved with symbols ranging from abstract lines to rudimentary figures resembling animals or tools. One symbol, a branching motif, appears on multiple tablets, fueling theories of a repeating code. The tablets were found alongside charred bones in a ritual pit, leading some scholars to argue they're votive objects, perhaps prayers to deities or ancestral spirits. But others, like archaeologist Marija Gimbutas, proposed a bolder idea. These could be Europe's oldest known writing, predating Mesopotamian cuneiform by over 2 millennia. The controversy hinges on the symbol's purpose. If they're writing, what do they record? One compelling theory suggests they're a Neolithic contract, possibly documenting a trade or sacred pact. The branching symbol, for instance, might denote a clan or lineage, while adjacent marks could tally livestock or harvests. Another hypothesis frames them as a lunar calendar, with sequences tracking moon phases for agricultural or ceremonial use. Compare this to the later Dispilio tablet in Greece, which also displays potential calendric notation. Yet skepticism persists. Critics point to the tablet's isolated discovery. No other examples with identical symbols have been found in the region, and their possible Vinca influence. The Vinca culture, known for its symbolic markings, flourished nearby around the same time. If the tablets borrowed Vinca signs without linguistic meaning, they might be personal ornaments or ritual aids rather than true writing. The debate mirrors that surrounding the Jiahu symbols in China. Are these emergent writing or meaningful but non-linguistic marks? Radiocarbon dating of the bones in the pit confirms their age, placing the tablets squarely in the late Neolithic, when Europe's first farmers were transitioning from nomadic life. This context is vital. If the symbols are proto-writing, they'd represent a colossal leap in human communication, emerging independently of the Near East. But if they're ritual objects, they still offer a window into how early societies encoded beliefs, perhaps a precursor to the votive tablets of later Mesopotamian temples. What's undeniable is their craftsmanship. The symbols were incised while the clay was still damp, suggesting deliberate, careful intent. The disc tablet's circular form is particularly intriguing, possibly symbolizing cyclical time or celestial bodies. Some symbols even resemble later Danube script signs, hinting at a prolonged symbolic tradition across the Balkans. The Tartaria tablets remain a Rorschach test for archaeologists. To some, they're a smoking gun for ancient European literacy, to others, a fascinating dead end. But their very ambiguity makes them priceless. They force us to ask, when does a symbol become writing? And in their silent, cryptic marks, we hear the echoes of a Neolithic mind reaching across time, grasping for a way to say, "We were here." As we turn the page, prepare to venture to the sun-baked cliffs of Jordan, where even older symbols etched into pottery fragments whisper of humanity's first experiments with recorded thought. Now, shifting our focus from the cryptic clay tablets of Transylvania, we arrive at one of the most remote islands on Earth, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, where towering stone figures known as moai have long captured the world's imagination. But beyond these iconic statues lies another mystery etched into the island's volcanic rock. A collection of petroglyphs that may represent an even earlier form of writing than the famous Rongorongo script. These carvings, scattered across the island's boulders and cliffs, depict everything from stylized human figures to intricate geometric patterns and animals like fish and birds. Among the most striking are the birdman motifs, featuring a humanoid figure with a beak-like face, often linked to the island's Tangata Monu or birdman cult. This ritual, central to Rapa Nui society, involved an annual competition where warriors would race to retrieve the first sooty-tern egg of the season from a nearby islet. The winner's clan gained prestige and power, and the event was immortalized in both oral chants and rock art. Unlike Rongorongo, which was carved onto wooden tablets, these petroglyphs are part of the landscape itself, worn by wind and rain but still remarkably preserved. Some scholars argue they functioned as a proto-writing system, recording myths, genealogies, or even territorial claims. The repetition of certain symbols, like the komari, a vulva-shaped design associated with fertility, suggests a shared visual language. Yet, without a bilingual key or living descendants who can interpret them, their meanings remain speculative. What makes these carvings particularly fascinating is their connection to the island's oral traditions. Rapa Nui's chants, passed down through generations, often reference the same symbols found in the petroglyphs. For example, one chant describes the creation of the island by the god Make, who is frequently depicted in the rock art alongside bird motifs. This interplay between spoken word and carved symbol hints at a sophisticated communication system that blended art, ritual, and language long before Rongorongo emerged. The petroglyphs also offer clues about the island's ecological collapse. Many carvings cluster around sacred sites like Orongo, the ceremonial village where the birdman competition took place. As deforestation and resource depletion destabilized Rapa Nui society, these symbols may have served as a way to reaffirm cultural identity, a visual anchor in a changing world. Some designs, like the double-bladed paddle or the frigate bird, appear to evolve over time, possibly reflecting shifts in religious or political power. Debates persist over whether these carvings constitute true writing. While they lack the linear arrangement of Rongorongo, their structured repetition and thematic consistency suggest they were more than mere decoration. Comparisons to other Polynesian petroglyphs, like those in Hawaii or the Marquesas, reveal similarities in style but not in function. Rapa Nui's symbols seem uniquely narrative. As we stand before these weathered stones, we're left to wonder, were these the islanders' first attempt to etch their stories into eternity? And if so, what secrets do they still hold? The petroglyphs of Rapa Nui are more than art. They're a silent dialogue between past and present, waiting for the right key to unlock their voices. Next, we'll travel to the banks of the Yellow River, where even older symbols scratched onto tortoise shells whisper of humanity's earliest scribbles. Now, turning our attention from the enigmatic carvings of Rapa Nui, we journey back even further in time, over 7,000 years ago, to the banks of the Yellow River in China. Here, the Neolithic village of Banpo offers us one of the earliest glimpses into humanity's attempts to communicate through symbols. Discovered in the 1950s, the Banpo archaeological site revealed thousands of pottery fragments adorned with simple yet deliberate markings. These symbols, etched onto ceramic vessels and tools, date back to around 5000 before Common Era, making them contemporaries of the Inca symbols in Europe and predating Mesopotamian cuneiform by nearly 2 millennia. But what do these scratches and lines mean? Are they mere ownership marks, clan emblems, or something more? The Banpo symbols consist of around 22 distinct characters, ranging from basic crosses and circles to more complex glyphs resembling plants or tools. Some appear repeatedly across different artifacts, suggesting a standardized system rather than random doodles. For instance, one recurring mark, a horizontal line with 3 vertical strokes, bears an uncanny resemblance to the later Chinese character for field, hinting at a possible continuity in symbolic thought. Scholars remain divided on their purpose. Some argue these marks were proto-writing, an early step toward a full-fledged script. They point to the symbol's placement, often near the rim or base of pots, as evidence of a functional role, perhaps denoting contents, ownership, or even ritual significance. Others counter that the symbols are too sparse and inconsistent to represent language, proposing instead that they served as clan identifiers or ritual marks for ceremonial vessels. What makes Banpo particularly intriguing is its connection to the later Shang dynasty oracle bones, which featured China's first undisputed writing system. A handful of Banpo symbols loosely resemble early Shang characters, fueling speculation that these Neolithic marks were the seeds from which Chinese script eventually grew. For example, a Banpo symbol resembling a stylized tree might echo the Shang character for wood, while another resembling a net could foreshadow the later glyph for hunting. Yet, without more context or longer inscriptions, the link remains tantalizingly speculative. The Banpo people were part of the Yongshao culture, a farming society that thrived along the Yellow River. Their pottery, painted with bold geometric designs and animal motifs, suggests a rich symbolic world where visual communication was deeply intertwined with daily life. The symbols might have encoded practical information like pottery workshop codes or family lineages, or they could have held spiritual meaning, acting as charms to protect the contents of a vessel. One compelling theory draws parallels to other early marking systems, like the Tartaria tablets or the Dispilio symbols, where proto-writing emerged alongside the needs of complex societies. As Banpo grew into a large, organized village, the need to track resources or assert identity might have spurred these symbolic innovations. Yet, unlike the Indus Valley Script or Proto-Cuneiform, Banpo's marks never evolved into a full writing system, at least not one we've found. The debate over Banpo's symbols underscores a broader question in archaeology. Where do we draw the line between decoration, notation, and true writing? Unlike the later Shang script, which recorded clear language, Banpo's marks are silent, but their persistence across centuries of pottery suggests they were more than accidental, they were meaningful. As we study these ancient scratches, we're reminded that writing didn't emerge fully formed. It began with small, tentative steps, marks that whispered of ideas, not yet words. Banpo's symbols may not tell us a story, but they offer a fleeting glimpse into the moment humanity first began to etch its thoughts into clay. Next, we'll explore another pivotal stepping stone in the history of writing, the Proto-Sinaitic script, where miners in the desert carved the bridge between hieroglyphs and the alphabet. Leaving behind the silent symbols of Banpo, we now venture into the arid landscapes of the Sinai Peninsula, where a revolutionary leap in writing emerged around 1900 before Common Era. Here, the Proto-Sinaitic script carved a path between the intricate hieroglyphs of Egypt and the streamlined alphabet we use today. These inscriptions, scratched onto rock faces and mining tools, represent one of the most pivotal, yet often overlooked chapters in the history of writing. The Proto-Sinaitic script was first discovered in 1905 by British archaeologist Flinders Petrie near the ancient Egyptian turquoise mines of Serabit el-Khadim. What made these markings extraordinary was their stark simplicity compared to the hundreds of hieroglyphic signs used by Egyptian scribes. Instead of elaborate pictures, Proto-Sinaitic relied on roughly 24 symbols, many of which were simplified versions of Egyptian glyphs. For example, the hieroglyph for house, a rectangle with an opening, became a two-line abstract shape resembling our letter B. Similarly, the Egyptian snake glyph twisted into a zigzag that evolved into the letter N. But who created this hybrid script, and why? The answer lies with the miners laboring in Sinai's harsh deserts. These workers, likely Canaanite laborers under Egyptian rule, needed a way to communicate quickly, something far more practical than memorizing hundreds of hieroglyphs. Inspired by Egyptian writing but untrained in its complexities, they boiled it down to its essence, consonants. Each Proto-Sinaitic symbol represented a single consonant sound, a radical departure from hieroglyphs, which mixed logograms' whole word symbols with phonetic signs. This innovation laid the foundation for all alphabetic systems to come. The genius of Proto-Sinaitic was its adaptability. Miners could scratch these symbols onto tools or cave walls with ease, and the pared-down shapes were faster to learn than hieroglyphs. Crucially, the script also reflected their native Semitic language. The symbol for ox, aleph, stood for the glottal stop sound at the start of their word for ox, alpu. Likewise, water, mem, represented the m sound in mayim. This acrophonic principle, using a word's first sound as its symbol, became the bedrock of later alphabets from Phoenician to Greek to Latin. Despite its brilliance, Proto-Sinaitic remained obscure for centuries. Only a handful of inscriptions survive, most just a few characters long. One tantalizing example, a Sphinx statue from Serabit el-Khadim, bears a dedication to the goddess Hathor in Proto-Sinaitic alongside Egyptian hieroglyphs. This bilingual artifact hints at the script's transitional role, bridging two worlds. Yet, without longer texts, linguists still debate nuances like vowel notation or dialectal variations. The script's legacy, however, is undeniable. By 1500 before Common Era, Proto-Sinaitic's descendants spread northward, morphing into the Phoenician alphabet. That system, with its 22 streamlined letters, was so efficient that it birthed nearly every modern alphabet, from Arabic to Hebrew to the Latin letters on your screen. Imagine, every time you jot down a note, you're using the great-great-grandchild of symbols carved by miners 40 centuries ago. What's striking is how Proto-Sinaitic solved a universal problem: communication under pressure. These laborers didn't set out to revolutionize writing, they just needed a practical tool. Yet their ingenuity echoes across millennia, proving that some of history's most transformative ideas emerge not from palaces or temples, but from the hands of everyday people. As we reflect on these desert-carved consonants, we're reminded that writing isn't just about recording language, it's about accessibility. The next time you glance at an alphabet, spare a thought for those nameless miners who turned hieroglyphs into something anyone could learn. Their script didn't just bridge Egypt and Phoenicia, it bridged the gap between the elite and the ordinary, paving the way for literacy to flourish. Now, let's turn to another script that defies categorization: the Cypro-Minoan syllabary, a cryptic offshoot of Linear that thrived in the melting pot of ancient Cyprus. Tucked between the Mediterranean waves and copper-rich mountains, the island of Cyprus became a crucible for ancient scripts, giving birth to one of the most perplexing, the Cypro-Minoan syllabary. Emerging around 1500 before Common Era, this script carried the legacy of Crete's Linear, but twisted it into something entirely unique. Unlike the Proto-Sinaitic script we just explored, which distilled writing into consonants, Cypro-Minoan clung to the syllabic tradition of its Minoan ancestors. Yet despite over 1,000 inscriptions discovered carved on clay tablets, votive offerings, and even metal ingots, this script remains a locked door to the island's Bronze Age secrets. The story begins with trade. Cyprus was the copper capital of the ancient world, and its ports buzzed with merchants from Crete, Egypt, and the Levant. When Minoan influence reached the island, their writing system likely arrived too. But here's the twist: while Linear faded in Crete after 1450 before Common Era, Cyprus adapted it into not one but three distinct scripts over centuries. The earliest, Cypro-Minoan one, appears closest to Linear A, with similar curved lines and plant-like symbols. Yet archaeologists have found it in contexts Linear A never reached, like a tiny clay ball from Nkomi, inscribed with just 5 signs, possibly a trader's token. What makes Cypro-Minoan maddening for linguists is its resistance to pattern. While later Cypriot scripts like the deciphered classical Cypriot syllabary clearly represent Greek, Cypro-Minoan's underlying language is a mystery. Some inscriptions, like those from the site of Kalivossos, cluster symbols in repeating groups, suggesting administrative lists. Others, like a bronze spatula from Ugarit in Syria, bear just 3 elegant glyphs, perhaps a dedicatory message or owner's mark. The sheer variety implies the script served multiple purposes, from temple inventories to private correspondence. One breakthrough came in 2012 when French archaeologists unearthed a clay cylinder at the site of Pila Kokkinakrimos. Unlike typical short texts, this object bore a spiral inscription of 21 signs, the longest Cypro-Minoan text known. Yet without a bilingual key like the Rosetta Stone, even this rare lengthy example offers no easy answers. Some scholars, like Dr. Silvia Ferrara, propose the script encoded a pre-Greek Etiocypriot language, while others argue it could represent an early form of Hurrian or Luwian from Anatolia. The script's evolution adds another layer of intrigue. By 1200 before Common Era, Cypro-Minoan 2 and 3 simplified the symbols, possibly reflecting shifts in power after the collapse of Bronze Age empires. A notable example comes from the Phaistos tablet found at Nkomi, where signs resemble both Linear A and later Cypriot Greek syllables. This could mean the script was adapting to new languages as waves of settlers arrived. What's tragic is how close we are to cracking it. Unlike the handful of Proto-Sinaitic inscriptions, Minoan has an abundance of material, yet the average text is so brief it's like trying to reconstruct a novel from scattered sentences. Recent computational analyzers have mapped symbol frequencies and sequences, revealing possible grammatical structures. But until a multilingual inscription appears, the voices of Cyprus copper merchants, priests, and craftsmen remain just beyond our grasp. As we ponder these silent syllables, consider their paradox, a script born from globalization, yet trapped in isolation. While Proto-Sinaitic's descendants spread across continents, Minoan flourished only on its island home, a testament to Cyprus' role as both bridge and barrier in the ancient world. Next, we'll journey to Jordan's sun-baked valleys, where 8,000-year-old pottery marks the Yarmoukyan symbol's whisper of writing's earliest stirrings. Leaving behind Cyprus and its enigmatic Bronze Age script, we now travel east to the arid landscapes of Jordan, where an even older mystery lies etched onto fragments of ancient pottery. Unearthed from the fertile soils of the Jordan Valley, the Yarmoukyan marks represent some of the earliest known symbols in human history, dating back a staggering 8,000 years. These markings, discovered on pottery shards from sites like Shah Hagalan and Manhattan, are more than simple decorations. Arranged in deliberate sequences, they hint at a system of communication far older than the first cities of Mesopotamia. What makes them extraordinary is their potential link to the very origins of writing. Unlike the later, fully developed scripts we've explored, the Yarmoukyan symbols occupy a gray zone between proto-writing and true language. Archaeologists have identified around 20 distinct signs, including crosses, chevrons, and ladder-like patterns. Some appear in repeated combinations, suggesting they conveyed specific meanings, perhaps ownership, quantities, or even early religious concepts. One theory proposes these marks served as a primitive accounting system for Neolithic farmers. At a time when surplus crops began fueling trade, such symbols could have tracked grain stores or livestock. A pottery bowl from Ain Ghazel, for instance, bears a sequence of 5 parallel lines beside a zigzag, possibly a tally of harvests or a map of irrigation channels. But the Yarmoukyan marks also tantalize linguists for another reason. Several symbols bear uncanny resemblances to later Proto-Canaanite signs from the 2nd millennium before Common Era, a script considered the ancestor of the Phoenician alphabet. The Yarmoukyan X symbol, for example, mirrors the Proto-Canaanite character for T, while their zigzag lines evoke early forms of the letter M. Could these Neolithic potters have unintentionally seeded symbols that evolved into alphabetic writing 3,000 years later? Some scholars, like Dr. Pierre Bourdrouil, argue that while the Yarmoukyan marks weren't a full script, their reuse in later periods suggests cultural memory spanning millennia. The context of these finds adds depth to the puzzle. The Yarmoukyan culture thrived during the Neolithic Revolution, a time when humans transitioned from nomadic hunting to settled farming. Their symbols often appear on painted pottery used in communal feasting, hinting at ritual uses beyond mere record-keeping. At the site of Wadi Shaib, archaeologists found a storage jar marked with concentric circles buried beneath a house floor, possibly a protective charm for the harvest. Yet deciphering these symbols faces steep challenges. Unlike Minoan's 1,000 inscriptions, only around 200 Yarmoukyan marked artifacts exist, many fragmentary. Without longer texts or a bilingual key, their meanings remain speculative. Recent studies using 3D imaging, however, have revealed previously unnoticed subtleties, like how certain marks were incised when the clay was wet, while others were added after firing. This could differentiate between utilitarian notations and ceremonial symbols. The Yarmoukyan marks stand as silent witnesses to humanity's first experiments with symbolic communication. They remind us that writing didn't emerge fully formed in Sumerian temples but grew slowly from countless small innovations, scratches on pottery, notches on bones, each a stepping stone toward literature, law, and history. As we continue our journey, we'll encounter another script that blurred the line between art and writing, West Africa's Undeciphered, where secret societies turned symbolism into a language of power. Shifting our gaze from the ancient fields of Jordan to the lush forests of West Africa, we encounter a script steeped in secrecy and symbolism, the Undeciphered. Unlike the abstract marks of the Olmecian culture, Undeciphered is a fully developed ideographic system, one that flourished among the Ajagam people of modern-day Nigeria and Cameroon long before the 5th century of the Common Era. What sets Undeciphered apart is its dual nature. It wasn't just written but performed. Members of the Ekp and Ngb secret societies, the guardians of this script, used it in rituals, courtroom proceedings, and even as a form of silent communication through elaborate hand gestures and body movements. Imagine a judge tracing Undeciphered symbols in the air during a trial, or initiates exchanging hidden messages with a flick of the wrist. This was a living, breathing script that transcended paper and ink. The symbols themselves are a mesmerizing blend of the literal and the abstract. Over 1,000 have been documented, ranging from simple geometric shapes to intricate depictions of animals, tools, and human figures. A circle with radiating lines might represent the sun or divine power, while two interlocked crocodiles could symbolize a treaty or unbreakable bond. Some signs, like the Undeciphered of the heart, conveyed complex emotions, a single glyph combining a heart shape with crossed lines to denote love entwined with suffering. These weren't mere pictographs, they encoded philosophies, laws, and histories accessible only to the initiated. Undeciphered's influence extended far beyond secret societies. It adorned the walls of sacred groves, the skin of ritual dancers through scarification, and even everyday objects like calabashes and textiles. One striking example is the Yukara cloth, an indigo-dyed fabric covered in Undeciphered symbols worn by high-ranking Ekp members. Each stitch carried meaning. A diamond pattern might signify wealth, while a serpent coiled around a staff could represent wisdom or healing. Remarkably, echoes of Undeciphered survive today in the logos of Nigerian institutions. The emblem of the University of Nigeria, for instance, features a stylized Undeciphered of unity, a testament to the script's enduring cultural resonance. Deciphering Undeciphered poses unique challenges. Unlike scripts tied to a single language, its symbols conveyed concepts understood across linguistic boundaries, a universal visual language for pre-colonial West Africa. Colonial-era suppression further obscured its meanings. British administrators banned Ekp societies, fearing their political power, and many Undeciphered inscribed artifacts were destroyed. Yet fragments endure. In the village of Arachukwu, elders still preserve clay pots marked with ownership symbols, and modern artists like Victor Ekpuk reinterpret Undeciphered in contemporary murals, bridging ancient and modern expression. What makes Undeciphered truly revolutionary is its gestural dimension. Scholars like Dr. Ivor Miller note that certain symbols could be written in the air or through dance, a fluidity that blurs the line between writing and performance. The Undeciphered of the leopard, for example, might be drawn on the ground or enacted by crouching and mimicking the animal's gait, a multimedia script centuries before the digital age. This dynamism invites us to rethink what writing can be, not just static marks, but a symphony of movement, meaning, and memory. As we move from the performative elegance of Undeciphered, our next stop takes us to the vibrant visual language of Ghana's Adinkra symbols, where philosophy and artistry intertwine on the very fabric of daily life. Leaving behind the performative depth of Undeciphered, we arrive at a world where wisdom is woven into cloth, the Adinkra symbols of Ghana. Emerging among the Akan people in the 18th century, these intricate designs transform everyday fabrics into canvases of philosophy, history, and moral guidance. Unlike the secretive Undeciphered, Adinkra symbols were, and still are, meant to be seen and understood by all, turning textiles into open books of communal knowledge. Picture a royal funeral in Kumasi, where mourners wear hand-stamped robes adorned with symbols like Jai Nyame, except for God or Sankofa, return and fetch it. Each motif carries layered meanings, from spiritual devotion to practical life lessons. The Jai Nyame symbol, a stylized spiral within a circle, represents the omnipotence of the divine, while Sankofa, a heart-shaped design with a backward-turning head, urges learning from the past. These aren't mere decorations, they're visual proverbs compressing generations of wisdom into singular, elegant forms. What makes Adinkra particularly fascinating is its structured repetition, a feature that sparks debate among scholars. Could this be considered a writing system? On one hand, the symbols lack phonetic elements. They convey ideas rather than specific words or sounds, yet their consistent use across contexts, cloth, pottery, architecture, even modern logos, shows a codified visual language. Take the Dweneman, ram's horns, symbolizing strength and humility. Whether stamped on a funeral cloth or carved into a chief's stool, its meaning remains unchanged, much like a written word retains its definition across mediums. The creation process itself is an art form. Craftsmen carve symbols into calabash gourds, then dip them in a dye made from boiled tree bark to stamp cotton cloth. Every step, from selecting motifs to their arrangement, follows tradition. A single cloth might combine Adinkrahin, king of Adinkra, a concentric circle representing leadership, with Ensorama, star, signifying divine guidance, a narrative of power and spirituality woven into fabric. Adinkra's adaptability has propelled it into contemporary life. Ghana's national airline uses the Fawohodi, independence symbol, an abstract bird in flight, as its emblem, while the Akoma, heart, appears on everything from jewelry to political campaign posters. This ubiquity raises intriguing questions. If a symbol like Mate Macy, what I hear I keep, can express the value of discretion on a centuries-old cloth and a modern-day t-shirt, does it not function like a written word, transcending time and medium? Yet Adinkra resists easy classification. Unlike linear scripts, its messages are often cumulative, with multiple symbols combining to tell richer stories. A mourning cloth might blend Ouo Atwadi, ladder of death, reminding viewers of mortality, with Kintinkanton, puffed-up extravagance, cautioning against vanity, a layered sermon in cloth. This visual syntax, where meaning builds through repetition and combination, blurs the line between art and writing. Today, Adinkra thrives as both cultural heritage and living art. Schools in Ghana teach the symbols' histories, preserving their proverbial roots, while global designers reinterpret them for new audiences. Whether etched into a courtroom's walls or printed on a smartphone case, these motifs continue to speak, a testament to the enduring power of symbols that stitch wisdom into the fabric of daily life. As we reflect on Adinkra's legacy, our journey through forgotten scripts takes us next to a monumental puzzle from the Indus Valley, a single inscription that might hold the key to an entire civilization's voice. Now, shifting our focus from the vibrant cloth-bound wisdom of Adinkra, we journey back over 4,000 years to the sun-baked ruins of Dolavera, one of the Indus Valley's most sophisticated cities. Here, archaeologists uncovered a remarkable artifact, the Dolavera signboard, a 10-symbol inscription carved in oversized glyphs, towering above the city's northern gateway like an ancient billboard. Unlike the short, cryptic Indus Valley seals, this public display suggests a message meant to be seen and understood by many, sparking debates about its purpose. Was it a royal decree, a spiritual warning, or perhaps the world's oldest street sign? The signboard's glyphs, each nearly 16 inches tall, are etched into a polished slab of white gypsum, a material chosen deliberately for its contrast against the city's reddish-brown walls. Their sheer size implies urgency or importance, a command or announcement meant to dominate the visual landscape. One prevailing theory is that it served as a directional marker, guiding travelers through the city's meticulously planned grid. D'Oliveira's advanced urban design, with its reservoirs, ceremonial grounds, and segregated neighborhoods, hints at a society that valued order. The signboard, positioned at a major gateway, could have functioned like a modern traffic sign directing visitors to key areas. Yet others argue its symbols carry a more authoritative tone. Among the 10 glyphs, one recurs in later Indus seals, a looping, trident shape which some interpret as a royal emblem. If correct, this could transform the signboard into a king's proclamation, akin to a Mesopotamian stele declaring a ruler's power. The glyph's repetition and symmetry, arranged in a deliberate, almost rhythmic pattern, suggest a ceremonial or legal text, possibly a civic code or a dedication to a deity. The city's proximity to trade routes further fuels speculation that the signboard announced tariffs or treaties to incoming merchants. What makes the D'Oliveira inscription especially tantalizing is its potential as a Rosetta Stone for the Indus script. While most Indus Valley inscriptions are brief, averaging just 4 to 5 symbols, this 10-glyph sequence offers a rare extended sample. Linguists note that its symbols cluster in pairs, possibly indicating compound words or grammatical structures. For example, a jar glyph followed by a fish could symbolize prosperity, water, and abundance, while a man paired with a shield might denote protection. Without bilingual context, these remain educated guesses, but the signboard's public placement implies its message was universally recognizable to D'Oliveira's inhabitants. The signboard also challenges assumptions about Indus Valley literacy. Its oversized, carefully executed glyphs suggest a society where writing wasn't confined to administrative elites but served a communal role. Imagine a bustling gateway where travelers, traders, and priests paused to read, or at least recognize this monumental text. This contrasts sharply with Mesopotamia's cuneiform or Egypt's hieroglyphs, which were often restricted to temples and palaces. Here, writing may have been democratic, a tool for civic life rather than just control. Today, the D'Oliveira signboard stands as both a beacon and a riddle. Its glyphs, though undeciphered, whisper of a society that valued communication as much as construction. Whether it guided, governed, or glorified, its very existence proves the Indus Valley's sophistication, a civilization that etched its thoughts in stone, waiting for us to listen. Now, leaving behind the grand stone whispers of D'Oliveira, we venture into the scorching sands of Egypt's western desert, where a discovery at Wadi el-Hol, Arabic for Gulch of Terror, shakes our understanding of how writing itself was born. Here, carved into the limestone cliffs along an ancient military road, lies what might be the earliest alphabet in history. Dating back to around 1800 before Common Era, these inscriptions bridge the gap between pictographic hieroglyphs and the abstract letters that would later conquer the world. The Wadi el-Hol carvings are startlingly simple compared to Egypt's ornate hieroglyphs. Instead of detailed birds and serpents, we see streamlined symbols, a bull's head reduced to 2 curved lines, a waving human figure simplified into a single stroke. These aren't just abbreviations, they're a revolutionary leap, the first attempts to represent sounds rather than objects. Imagine laborers or mercenaries, likely Semitic speakers living in Egypt, borrowing hieroglyphs but stripping them down to their bare phonetic essence. A hieroglyph of a house PR in Egyptian might become the letter B, while a water ripple N turns into N. This was writing breaking free from the priestly elite, becoming something portable, practical, and crucially learnable without years of training. What makes these carvings explosive is their context. They were found near a bustling trade route linking the Nile to distant oases, a place where cultures collided. Semitic workers, possibly employed by the Egyptian army, needed to communicate across language barriers. Hieroglyphs were too complex for quick messages, so they innovated. The result, a script that's neither fully Egyptian nor fully Semitic, but a hybrid, a prototype for the Phoenician alphabet that would later spread across the Mediterranean. The Aleph Ox and Bet House of Wadi El Hol are recognizably ancestral to our own A and B. Scholars debate who exactly carved these symbols. Were they soldiers marking their presence, traders recording deals? One compelling theory ties them to the Hyksos, a Semitic people who later ruled parts of Egypt. The inscription's mix of hieroglyphic familiarity and radical simplicity suggests a moment of cultural improvisation, writing not as a sacred art, but as a tool for everyday survival. Unlike the monumental texts of pharaohs, these carvings are intimate, even rushed, as if their creators were more concerned with practicality than permanence. The Wadi El Hol inscriptions force us to rethink where and how writing evolved. For centuries, we assumed alphabets emerged fully formed in Phoenicia. But here, in this desolate canyon, we see the messy, experimental birth of letters. It's a reminder that some of humanity's greatest leaps weren't made in palaces or temples, but in the margins, by people solving immediate problems with whatever tools they had. Today, every time you read or type, you're using the distant intellectual descendants of those desert carvings. The Gulch of Terror, it turns out, is where writing learned to run. Now, shifting our gaze from the sun-baked cliffs of Egypt to the misty highlands of ancient Mexico, we encounter another pivotal moment in the story of writing, the enigmatic script of the Zapotec civilization. Flourishing around 500 before Common Era in what is now Oaxaca, the Zapotec script holds the distinction of being Mesoamerica's earliest known writing system, predating even the famed Maya glyphs. Unlike the phonetic experiments of Wadi El Hol, the Zapotec symbols are deeply intertwined with ritual, power, and the cosmos, etched into the stones of Monte Alban, their awe-inspiring hilltop city. The Zapotec script is a puzzle wrapped in layers of cultural meaning. At first glance, its glyphs resemble elaborate calendric notations twisting serpents, stylized human faces, and abstract dots and bars. These symbols often appear alongside dates in the 260-day ritual calendar, suggesting a close link between writing and sacred timekeeping. Yet their linguistic content remains stubbornly opaque. While we can recognize names of rulers and gods, the underlying language ancestral to modern Zapotec tongues defies full decipherment. Imagine standing before a monument at Monte Alban, its surface alive with glyphs that whisper of coronations, celestial events, or prophecies, but whose precise narratives remain just out of reach. What makes Zapotec writing extraordinary is its monumental context. Unlike the informal carvings of Wadi El Hol, these glyphs were meant to be seen and revered. The danzantes, or dancers, of Monte Alban are a prime example. Over 300 carved slabs depicting contorted figures, likely prisoners of war or sacrificial victims, accompanied by cryptic glyphs. Some scholars argue these represent the earliest examples of writing in the Americas, not merely as art but as political propaganda, a way for Zapotec elites to immortalize their dominance. Other inscriptions, like the Conquest Slab, hint at military victories with glyphs of conquered towns flanked by dates and captives. The ritual purpose of the script is undeniable. Many glyphs appear on ceramic urns and jade ornaments buried in tombs, suggesting they served as conduits between the living and the dead. One recurring motif, the jaguar mouth, may symbolize portals to the underworld, while glyphs of rain gods and maize plants tie writing to agricultural cycles. Yet frustratingly, without a bilingual key like the Rosetta Stone, we're left to speculate. Was this a fully developed logosyllabic system, blending sounds and ideas like Mayan script? Or did it function more like proto-writing, conveying concepts without capturing speech? Recent discoveries add tantalizing clues. In 2020, archaeologists uncovered a stone block at the site of Atsumpa, bearing a previously unseen glyph sequence, possibly a royal title. Meanwhile, computational linguists are comparing Zapotec symbols to later Mixtec and Maya scripts, searching for evolutionary links. But the script's isolation poses challenges. Unlike Linear B, which was deciphered through its kinship to Greek, Zapotec has no clear linguistic descendants with well-documented histories. The Zapotec script's legacy endures in modern Oaxaca, where indigenous communities still speak Zapotec languages. Deciphering these glyphs wouldn't just solve a linguistic mystery, it would restore voices silenced by centuries of colonial erasure. For now, the stones of Monte Albon keep their secrets, reminding us that writing in all its forms is never merely about recording words. It's about power, memory, and the eternal human urge to say to the future, "We were here." As we prepare to cross another frontier in our journey, the next script we'll explore emerges from the forests of West Africa, a system of symbols so fluid and expressive it transcends pen and paper altogether. Now, leaving the ritual glyphs of Mesoamerica behind, we arrive at the twilight of our journey, a language that stands at the crossroads of the familiar and the unknowable. The Etruscan language of ancient Italy is unlike any we've explored so far. While scholars have pieced together parts of its alphabet and vocabulary, vast portions of its texts, especially those steeped in religion and mysticism, remain locked away, their meanings just beyond our grasp. The Etruscans, who thrived between the 8th and 3rd centuries before Common Era, were the cultural powerhouse of pre-Roman Italy. Their influence seeped into Roman art, architecture, and even divination practices. Yet their language, written in an alphabet borrowed from Greek traders, refuses to yield all its secrets. Thanks to bilingual inscriptions and loanwords in Latin, we've deciphered basic phrases, gravestones declaring, "This is the tomb of," or trade records listing quantities of wine. But the real enigma lies in their sacred texts. The Liber Linteus, a linen book preserved by sheer chance when it was torn apart and used to wrap an Egyptian mummy, is the longest Etruscan document ever found. Its 2,000 words, meticulously penned in black and red ink, are thought to be a ritual calendar, but without context, its incantations and deity names remain a haunting chorus of unanswered questions. What makes Etruscan so tantalizing is its isolation. Unlike most languages of Europe, it doesn't belong to the Indo-European family. Its roots may trace back to the prehistoric Aegean or even Anatolia, a relic of lost migrations. This linguistic solitude means we lack the Rosetta Stone advantage, no close relative to help us crack its grammar. Take the word eyes, which appears constantly in religious inscriptions. Does it mean God, prayer, or something else entirely? Even the Etruscans' own name for themselves, Racina, feels like a whisper from the shadows. The physical remnants of their writing are everywhere, etched into temple offerings, bronze mirrors, and the infamous Piacenza liver, a sheep's liver inscribed with divine names used for haruspicy, the art of reading entrails. Over 10,000 inscriptions survive, yet many are frustratingly brief or repetitive. Funerary texts dominate, but their poetry, if it exists, is lost to us. Imagine uncovering a verse from their literature, only to find it reads like an inventory. 3 cups, 1 bowl for the underworld. Recent breakthroughs offer glimmers of hope. Multispectral imaging has revealed faded texts on pottery, while databases cross-reference symbols across artifacts. In 2019, a slab discovered near Florence featured the name Uni, likely their version of the goddess Juno, alongside a rare verb that might mean to offer. But progress is slow. Unlike Linear B, which was unraveled by connecting symbols to Greek, Etruscan resists such shortcuts. The tragedy is that the Etruscans were meticulous record keepers. Roman historians wrote of their libraries, now ash and dust. What might we learn from their lost plays, laws, or hymns? For now, their language lingers as a reminder that decipherment isn't just about alphabets, it's about reclaiming voices that shape the world. As we close this chapter on forgotten scripts, consider this: every untranslated word is a door still waiting to be opened. Don't forget to vote in the comments for which of these 30 languages intrigues you the most, and hit subscribe to join us as we keep unraveling history's greatest mysteries. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring. As we reach the end of this journey through forgotten languages and undeciphered scripts, it's worth pausing to marvel at the sheer diversity of these lost forms of communication. From the earliest Neolithic marks on clay tablets to the intricate imperial records of vanished civilizations, each script we've explored represents not just a linguistic puzzle but an entire world, waiting to be rediscovered. The Voynich Manuscript's botanical riddles, the Indus Valley's cryptic seals, the haunting whispers of Etruscan rituals, they all remind us that language is more than just words. It's a living artifact of human thought, culture, and ambition. Imagine the seismic shifts in history that could follow a single breakthrough. Deciphering linear might unveil the trade networks of the Minoans, rewriting our understanding of ancient Mediterranean economies. Translating the Rongorongo glyphs could finally reveal the true story of Easter Island's collapse. The Proto-Elamite tablets, with their numerical mysteries, might hold the key to how early states managed their resources. Every undeciphered script is a time capsule, and each one we crack has the potential to shatter long-held assumptions about the past. What ties these scripts together isn't just their obscurity, it's the resilience of human curiosity. From World War II codebreakers to modern artificial intelligence, we've thrown every tool at these enigmas. Some, like the Phaistos Disc, resist even our most advanced efforts, while others, like portions of Etruscan, slowly yield fragments of meaning. The quest to understand them isn't just academic, it's a race against time. Climate change, looting, and the slow decay of organic materials threaten these fragile records. The Singapore stone, partially destroyed in the 19th century, stands as a cautionary tale of what we've already lost. So here's where you come in. Which of these 30 scripts captivated you the most? Was it the birdman glyphs of Rapa Nui, the knotted threads of the Inca Quipu, or something else entirely? Drop your vote in the comments below. We'd love to hear which mystery speaks to you. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into history's unsolved puzzles, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There are countless more enigmas waiting to be explored, from lost cities to unexplained artifacts, and we'll be unraveling them together. As we close, remember this: every undeciphered script is a conversation cut short, a story interrupted. But with each new discovery, technological leap, or flash of insight, we reclaim a little more of that silenced dialogue. The past isn't just something we study, it's something we rebuild word by word. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep questioning the unknown. End screen with subscription prompt and suggested videos.